Well, here we are again. It's Wednesday, and there was some real question whether the last video would be the last video. It ended up going a little bit less painful at the end of the turn, the recovery part of it, than I expected or felt from the last time. So maybe I'm getting kind of used to it. I'm beginning to do the gamey things to make recovery a little bit less, well, both easier to do in terms of recovering without getting more damaged, but also easier to do in the sense of making the game actually playable, which basically involve attacks coming in waves. If you go up there and you're shaken, you want to take your retreat. You maybe want to take your retreat right away so you're less likely to get shaken. Just keep, hitting the defender in waves. There's no real reason to be adjacent to him. The only reason to stay adjacent with something is if you're trying to hold terrain, in which case you pay a penalty over here if you fall back, and because of artillery. You can't move artillery into an enemy zone of control. So if you're defending, essentially, you have your artillery in place, and you don't want to give the space up. This might actually resolve one of the issues that I've had with the game, which is how muddled the fighting is getting all the time. So by playing kind of naively, I ended up with situations with a lot of interpenetration from attacks, when the actuality is, yeah, the defender falls back, the attacker probably, well, no. The attacker doesn't want to push forward with shaken units, but they're not going to have that opportunity usually. Anyway, okay. So I think we'll still see some of that, a lot of that messiness, because there's advantages to falling back in terms of your morale checks. So where are we? And then we'll get to some personal stuff, which is actually the real reason that I'm back. Not just the gameplay things, although the gameplay things had convinced me I'm playing another turn. But it might not have been this soon. But it also might not have been this late, if not for things in life. Okay, so what do we got going on? A lot of Union troops moving onto the board. No biggie there. We'll go into more detail of that if we want to. Heath has kind of worn himself out against Buford. Buford's not in great shape either. The question, of course, is does Buford withdraw or does Heath withdraw to recover first? Well, Heath's got a problem, which is 11th Corps is coming up his ass. So he's probably going to let Buford get away. And now if Buford leaves once the Confederate zones of influence are no longer on him, although artillery presents a zone of influence, so that might not be happening. Then he doesn't pay any penalty in terms of Army morale. And Union Army morale is pretty badly hit. That's a major part of the victory points. Well, that is the major part of the victory points in the game. If you don't want to count the fact that the operational game gives the Confederates a huge bonus to act historically. And enough of a bonus that they automatically win the game, I think. What it should really be is that they have a penalty that they have to overcome, and it shouldn't be as big as it is, because they wouldn't be able to come onto the field in reaction to a Union deployment with fatigued units or whatever. Okay, elsewhere, we have swept the rest of Hare Ridge. Sure, some of Doubleday back here is, still technically on the ridge, but they're trying to fall back as much as they can. This Union position and the holding of the ridges west of Seminary doesn't look like it's going to happen. Over here, 2nd Corps has pretty much broken up the third corps defenses, and we've got reinforcements coming up. I've got to try to figure out where the hell, basically I have to do a lot of traffic direction, and there's going to be a lot of cases in the game where that's the issue, because the roads kind of converge on Gettysburg, and you got, columns coming into play against each other, and those columns are kind of long, and one will get in the way of the other. The main way I'm trying to overcome that is 6th Corps is going to try to take a position on Cemetery. Then we come over here where the Union Cav created a big line to prevent Stuart, who's on way early, and Early, who's on way Stuart, who were kind of threatening to push into that direction. Well, Early's moved up against 3rd Corps. Stuart has tried to go for an outflank, which isn't really working. The reason for that is we got Huey over here who has kind of helped cut the main road, so I'm like having to wander around back here. Stuart would be really useful. He would have been really useful coming up behind 3rd Corps and causing problems there. I'm beginning to think Stuart may want to swing around and not engage this heavily. He's got some problems. First of all, the Cav's in his way. Okay, he could fight his way through that if he wanted to. It's only Cav. He's only Cav. But 2nd Corps is beginning to deploy some ground unit, some infantry down here. That's a problem. That's probably not something I want to face. There's a lot of penalties for Cav trying to attack infantry. Infantry attacking Cav works out okay, because the Cav dismounts and fights as dragoons, basically. All right, what's going on up here? Yeah, we got a 12th Corps here, and 6th Corps are kind of colliding. 5th Corps is beginning to gather up, really trying to relieve 3rd Corps. I might put divisions into reserve or whatever. The only way that you get, well, no. One of the few ways, you can get them through recovery of units. One of the few ways that you can get Army command points back, or Army morale points back. One of a very few. 11th Corps, I said it was coming up behind Heath, but some of it's also coming up this way. And we got some of it here, which should be on the board already. All right, we'll put Bulow or whatever there. I think he's following this up, and I just didn't get him deployed. And every time I do something like that, where I'm mixing the operational and the tactical board, I have to kind of fudge where things are. So if he went beyond, I don't know who this is. Steinware? Shirts. Looked like it was too long to be shirts. Okay, if this goes beyond shirts, I just put it on the tail of the line. Sometimes I put it in the hex behind it, but ideally what it really should be is right up on them. So we got a little bit more of 5th Corps here, which to me means, again, ideally I would have 5th Corps over dealing with trying to protect 1st Corps' withdrawal, but I needed them up here, and I didn't really realize they were coming in so far west with their other units. So yeah, some problems there. All right, let me get that unit on the board. I'll show it in a moment. Let me talk a little bit about personal shit though first. So I haven't been sleeping, or very little sleep. And a lot of the reason for that is Raid has been eating up more than usual time-wise. There's some big events on in terms of like, I have to be active a lot. Now, I could be up here playing while the game's playing itself, but I'm just sitting there watching videos. And also, I had gotten and am still in the attitude of, oh, let's watch, the news and whatnot. Especially, there's a lot of news right now. There's always a lot of news, but there's more than usual. And just a lot of stuff that I like, can go from one video to the other. Some raid videos as well, because they also introduced a new game mode. And that's a lot of why I wasn't sleeping, which is I've had to coordinate my clan with no communication tools in game. It's a mobile game, so people are kind of like, or at least it used to be mainly a mobile game. I don't know if it's mainly that now or whatever, but I'd say at least half the players are playing on their phones, which means that things like even in-game communications are hard for them to see and deal with. But also, like, do they really want to switch to Discord back and forth? Like, for me, I'm just bringing up, another window or whatever. But on the phone, yeah, I don't see it. The funny thing is, I just don't see it as a mobile game, right? Like, there's too much going on. It's too complex. You should be playing Candy Crush or something. But obviously, the reason it's as popular as it is, etc., is that it is available and has always been available as a mobile application. So, whatever. All right, let me get the whoever this is, Barlow, on the field. And indeed, he came in right where I expected him. Actually, he was in this hex, which means I jam him right up against. Before I'd been leaving gaps, and I'm like, wow, that's really not reasonable, because the gaps are like an artifact of me trying to avoid stepping on units on the operation using the operational map. Meredith, should he be visible? Probably. But he's coming on the board. Who cares? I don't have a counter for him. Well, I have this counter. I don't know. I haven't been tracking so much where the Union units are on the Confederate map. I'm more interested where the Confederate units are on the Union map for no good reason. I don't know. Anyway. Do I have enough gas in me to do the command phase? I'd better, because otherwise I should be reading my 1822 MEX rules. That's another factor. It is a much, much more complex 18XX. My thought had been 1822, because it was kind of a standard, was a moderately, simple 18XX. It's actually got a lot of crap going on in the base version, and 1822 MEX adds another layer of complexity to that, which kind of surprised me. I picked up 22 MEX because I'm like, well, this one's popular, and I was interested in it, but wow, there's cool stuff in 1822 MEX. I'm like, yeah, that cool stuff is another layer of complexity, which is perfect when I'm into 18XX and used to and able to spend the time to read the rules. I'm still into it, but not able to find any time to get away from, like, watching videos, jerking off online, and playing lots and lots of raid while this is all happening. Something kind of exciting has happened, or almost has happened. Lee back here, this road has been cleared. Oh, what road it is? Chambersburg Pike. I should know these things, right? Yeah. I'm not good at remembering stuff. But anyway, I can get almost, I'm like 1 or 2 movement points short of getting commands to Ewell now, because there's primary road, or I don't know, there's some kind of road here. I count it as primary, I think it is. But I think it turns to secondary here, or maybe not, something worse, when you enter Gettysburg itself. That's the best I can tell. I don't think the highways remain or primary roads remain as viable. But anyway, I'm just a couple movement points off. Ewell could easily be up further. He didn't do any movement or anything. What's he sitting on? Sitting on a supply wagon that probably wants to be closer to its troops as well, just so some cav doesn't come swinging around. But yeah, I'm almost at the point where I can give points to Ewell now, which he kind of needs. But to tell you the truth, all the Confederate officers are short on points, because they're the ones performing the attacks. This is something kind of nice, something I like better than what CWB does. In CWB, at least with defensive orders in place, and I think in general, even when you don't play with defensive orders, you end up as the defender issuing orders to shift your troops all the time. These little, hey, move here, do this. Complex orders have a penalty on them, so they kind of need a little bit more oomph behind them when you're paying points to make the orders. But it doesn't make up for issuing a set of orders and making a die roll. And usually defensive orders are more time constrained. Like, you really want to get that order in play right away, so you want a lot of oomph behind it anyway. You want it to be as positive as possible, like if you're bringing a reserve up or whatever. In this system, the defender's job is a lot easier. It costs less command points to do defensive things, like putting a unit in reserve. I don't know if it's 1 or 2. I think it's probably only 1. I should probably look this up if I'm going to be babbling about it. And yeah, we're just trying to avoid actually spending points, of course. Yeah, I haven't done a reserve yet. Yeah, reserve is 2. Yeah. But reserve is kind of interesting. It allows you a double move, basically, I think, looking at it. If I'm doing something like a directed command, that only costs me 1 order. And I still have a lot of flexibility towards, manipulating my line under even just orders from the cup. I would say that kind of corresponds to just like being able to move your units in CWB system. But I feel like the big one is the reserve. And reserve does cost you a couple points. I don't think that you stay in reserve, though, like you do with R&R. Let's see. If you're at reserve, oh yeah, so you only get the points if you're in reserve and you're an unused reserve, which kind of makes sense. But anyway, paying for reserve has a lot of advantages to it. That's probably the biggest defensive order. The defend order, I think, only had a 1-point cost and gives you a lot of combat capabilities, like a lot of combat advantages if you are attacked, and also it helps you force attacks. Other than that, though, you really don't spend a lot on defense. But for attack, first of all, you probably want to buy the attack capability. Yeah, that comes with fatigue costs, but just to be able to get the additional odds to make your attacks likely to be successful, although the dice are still a big factor. And then that costs you 2. And you might want to be more active at the same time. Like, it might be important for you to make multiple attacks during a given turn with all your units, even though, just to prevent the defender from being able to react as quickly by just shifting their forces or whatever, and kind of put them in a position where they actually, if they don't have reserves, they're going to be in trouble. And that's really what happened here. We cracked a line that had no reserves. We vastly outnumbered it and everything. I don't know if we would have been able to had we not expended kind of heavily on the fatigue side. Day 1, we've really kind of pressed, Third Corps especially, but McLaws also, has really kind of pushed a lot of effort into play. So there's that, you know. Anyway, it's time for me to stop speaking, I guess. Okay, so the planning. The points coming in from here, they're helping keep the attack alive. The attack would be very, very hard to be keeping going, which is an indication that you need, if you're going to launch an attack, you need to do, what is it, the PPPs or whatever they're called. You need to spend points, yeah. No, that's postponement. Pre-planning points, yeah, PPPs. You have to spend them. You really need them because this attack is petering out now. And Yule is in real trouble because he's not been able to get points off Lee. Now, the one thing you have as an advantage is that you're able to accumulate points over, you know, the nighttime period and maybe over the early morning to get yourself ready for an attack, even if you don't have a commander in, you know, even if you don't have the PPPs and whatnot. So you can kind of get yourself ready for an attack, etc. But it's a lot easier if Lee suggests that you do something. Nothing in particular, just something. You know, again, the system is what it is. It has its weird sort of ways. And what did I do? So I issued Heath R&R rolls and Pender, and I actually have a fair amount of points because I'm still getting like 2 to 3 points for the 1st and 3rd Corps here. But I'm taking it easy this time. I gave Pender attack orders because he's up here facing Doubleday. It is Doubleday, right? 1st Corps, I gave 2 things attack orders, both McLaws and Hood. Again, finishing off 1st Corps. That's their goal, right? Like, at least for the morning. And then they'll try to find a place to hang out and mellow. Pickett just has march orders. I don't see any reason he needs anything more than that. That'll allow me to reposition him earlier or later in the game. Anderson's in the cup, as is... Okay, so I give Johnson attack orders because I want to do some damage to 3rd Corps here. I put the rest of 2nd Corps in the cup because Rhodes is already adjacent to 3rd Corps stuff. So, yeah, I won't be able to push the attack here. I could have spent for a directed command, and I thought about it, but I think the big thing for me is to take out that artillery. I'm going to hope Johnson can kind of clear the way there. And then our attack's probably stalled. Here, I could engage the cav, but it's opening up a new pathway that, you know, I don't have the resources to support right now. And then, well, Stuart has directed commands because he had lots of points. I didn't want to do road. I can't really do road movement with him. I don't know what I'm going to do with him, but he kind of looks like his little expedition down there just failed. It's going to get me over to the Union side. I think I'm going to break. I'm fatigued, man. Like, everything in this game I find tiring and tiresome. Union side, and just checking to make sure that I've got at least some shits committed and doing something. Otherwise, there's probably a problem. The only thing I have to worry about is, or the only thing I don't have to worry about is Tyler. Okay. Because he's not on the map anymore. Might come back. So, didn't get a whole hell of a lot of points between Reynolds and Meade. and I used up the last of my pre-planning points. They were on 1st and 11th Corps. Let's see what we got. 11th Corps is doing something impressive. They're going to try to attack and hit Heath back here, which is going to be pretty fucking amazing because Heath is trying to R&R, which is not the best thing to be doing. It kind of ignored the fact that I'm in a position where I can get attacked. But anyway, the follow-up unit is just in the cup, I think. The idea being, look, you know, I'll trigger the attack as soon as I can. And then this other one is on road movement. So I think I got it on road. It probably shouldn't be. Yeah. See, I can move a little faster using road movement, but I can get close enough it's ugly. So let me put him in the cup too. He's not that big a deal. 1st Corps, I paid for defenses with everyone. Reynolds had to give them orders. 3rd Corps, I paid for defenses. The thing being, I can't count on 5th Corps getting in my way. 5th Corps command is over here. 6th Corps is the one with an inactive commander. So I'm going to have to send Sedgwick back. I thought about putting them in build orders, but it's going to take them a couple of turns to cover cemetery and culps or this or whatever. Wherever I end up being, it's going to take me a couple of turns to be there. So if I'm at half movement. So I figured, hey, just put them in. I put one under directed so that I can control the order a little bit more. I got to be careful with my points at this point. Caldwell ended up in the cup. The rest of 2nd is just doing march orders because they're trying to get to the map still. The Cav. Oh. So Beaufort's still in defend. He doesn't know that Heath is giving up. And he got the roll for it. Kilpatrick is in defend. Huey, though, and this sucks, over here on the very end is not. He was not able to get points. He's just under direct command. He got 1 point. And Greg is not. Greg ended up getting nothing and ended up in the cup. And this is the problem with independent units, whatever they are. And if I had a Cav Corps, I could do things like the way Stuart can do things. But Stuart is basically one big force at this point because the other Cav units, he incorporated the Cav units that were near him. The other ones that are not under his direct command are wandering around all over hell and creation and not really able to do much from a Corps standpoint. But a Cav Corps doesn't make as much sense because it's much more likely to be used in an independent manner. Anything I didn't... 12th Corps has... I think they're just in the cup because I want to be able to control their movement there. I really should have spent a point off 12th Corps, and maybe I will. I thought I did. Oh yeah, no. Williams, who's the back part of 12th Corps, has march orders because I want to get these guys moving, but Williams isn't going to be close enough to run into a problem. And yes, that's about it. Which is going to put us at the initiative phase. Let's take a look at what the points are. Game turn initiative. Union has, looks like 2 points towards initiative. Use a die for this. And Lee also saved 2 points. I'm not going to roll yet. I'm going to go sit outside and read or something. Again, you know, I just need a break after so many different aspects of this game. The command phases, a battle or two in terms of, like, you know, the early part of the turn when the actual engagement stuff is going, etc. It's just, I don't know. There might have been a time in my life when I would have been really kind of excited about this. I don't know. Because here's the thing. When I picked up Stonewall, the first thing I looked at is, oh my God, I can't figure this fucker out. All right. That was my first fire and movement TSS-based game. And, you know, I don't know how old would I have been. I don't know, maybe 11, somewhere around there, 10, 11, somewhere in that area. And I just looked at it and I said, I can't fucking understand this. I didn't want to open up Napoleon at Waterloo because that was unpunched. That was the freebie giveaway one. So, which I passed on actually after playing it for a bit. I did not like it that much, even though I liked games that were based on it. And I really kind of miss having it now because it's kind of a cute little scenario on it. I've gotten a different appreciation. But anyway, I went to, I don't know what, but I think Napoleon's Art of War, which is essentially the Napoleon at Waterloo stuff. And I figured out a way to play it and got a lot wrong. But anyway, to me, the big exciting thing was, oh, look, I started playing with those and it was like, cool, I'm playing something that's military and seems to actually be trying, you know, to represent the military better than like the Milton Bradley stuff and whatever. And then when I picked up Stonewall, or then when I went back to Stonewall, I was just so fucking excited by the idea that, look, this thing's separating that fire and movement stuff. And look, you want to talk about it, a friend of the family, when he found out I was starting to get into war games, sent me Panzer Leader. And it's basically the same kind of thing. I hated it, right? I mean, I really hated it. But I was just so gung-ho about the, hey, let's handle the actual kind of aspects of the tactical combat, you know, of what a battle looks like. Well, fast forward, you know, 10 years later, some of the old AH and SPI, what I considered more operational systems for tactical games, they began to appeal a little bit more. So I began to sort of see something in, say, the Napoleon at Waterloo type system with the, oh, look, there's a simplicity here that allows me to do things and to still picture what's happening in the battle and everything. And I kind of like it. I'm not usually in the mood for it, but when I am in the mood for it, it's a nice break from being into all the detail. But with this, what I've got, and Labatt kind of does this to me too, and a number of others. But anyway, what kind of happened was, you know, it was the simplicity of the systems that attracted me to them. This is not a simple system. It's a very, very cumbersome and painful mechanisms throughout it. Yet, it doesn't go into that kind of fire and movement stuff. And it's like, it's just really hard to get excited about it. And one of the things is, those fire and movement games tend to be, yes, they have a lot of repetitive actions, a lot of die rolls and whatnot. but each one is something that I feel is more interesting than how many times do I have to check morale with this unit in the turn. You know, and then I don't find it any easier to deal with the modifier-based combat results the way that I do, you know, a simple odds-based CRT, right? Sure, this gives a lot more accuracy, believability, whatever, but, you know, I would rather have the extra detail. And like I've said before, I would rather have the extra detail and have it get things kind of raw than have to go through the mental gymnastics that you have to deal with this odds, the DRM based odds and everything else. It's kind of funny, I was looking at Compass's Blenheim. Some people have, you know, been interested in, hey, what's my view on it, whatever. And I found a video on it. I was just like, huh, yeah, I don't usually watch videos. I watched it. The guy who played it seemed to enjoy it. This was a recent video. It just came out the last couple days. Seemed to like it for what it was. But I saw a couple of problems that he pointed out. He's actually very, very good. He does the rules explanations better than I tend to. A little bit less detail, but and then the playthroughs, and again, a little less detail, but he kind of gets you to the, hey, look, I did actually play this, and he's very honest about where he made mistakes and what he's seeing with it, but gives you a good first look at the game. And I think, I don't know his name, I'm horrible at this, but if you're interested in someone who does something kind of like I do, but a little bit more polished, even than like when I was trying to be relevant or whatever, and with good insight into the games. You may not agree with what he's saying, but he does give kind of the balanced thing. So he pointed out a couple of things, and one of which was this 7-hex system, which a BGGer, Steve Pohl, designed, actually. It gives kind of an abstracted view of what's going on. You don't see the lines in combat in quite the same way and whatever. And then it uses a DRM-based combat system where the DRMs basically take care of all the stuff that you would be doing in terms of closer maneuvering and everything. Anyway, regardless of that, he pointed out both of these things in a very clear and easy way to understand, and I really appreciated his video, and I want to give him a call out even though I don't know his name. But yeah, he's done a few different games. He did. I am interested in seeing it actually now. The Piacenza. He's doing, I guess, a kick on, you know, that sort of linear warfare, Age of Reason stuff, and that's a period that I'm obviously very interested in. Kind of, I don't know. My interest in the American Civil War has kind of toned down over the years. There's just so much on it. And I feel like I found my answer as to the best game. And you might say, oh, you mean Line of Battle? No, I mean CWB still. I mean, Line of Battle is just a little too detailed, a little too complex and whatnot. It's a more streamlined system, but again, it's at a cost of a little bit more mental gymnastics, getting rid of some of the mechanical aspects. And I probably respect Line of Battle more, but it's also the maps. Those CWB hideous maps are really easy to play on. So, anyway, just avoiding getting into the playthrough. Not that I'm going to do it right now, but I want to chat. Now in the very wee hours of Thursday morning. I'm happy because I came up here and I found a pipe that I haven't been able to find all day. I knew I had smoked it and I looked everywhere that I thought it could possibly be except up here. Well, there was one other place, but I actually came up here and looked and I didn't see it, but it kind of blends in there. At least now I know where it is. All right, I guess we start with the initiative. We had said both sides had a 2. I think the previous initiative holder gets to keep it, which means the Union gets 1. I've got a little wagon there that I forgot to roll for as well, which might as well do a rules lookup since I haven't done one in a while, like on camera. These are scenarios. Unfortunately, I really wish it had. Here's what I was on the page I was looking for. The Army Supply Train. I roll 2 dice. I need doubles, but I don't want a 6 or higher on doubles. I do not get doubles. So we just shift this forward. This actually, we checked for this last turn. But anyway. Alrighty. I don't know what I'm doing. Zoom in a little bit on this decision because I don't think I've done this much since the battlefield started, but the Union has an ultimate bonus on this first pick. And I can't choose any of my defend orders. I could choose to send Schertz's attack, which might not be a bad choice. But the only things that I have under direct command are actually things that I want to withhold. Huey, I wouldn't mind falling back with Huey, but I kind of want to pull Kilpatrick back a little bit. For some reason, he and Greg are still... Greg, I know why he's on defense. Kilpatrick is on defense because I thought he included Huey. But I don't particularly want to trigger either one of those. Well, it doesn't really matter. The two things that are under direct command, one of them is 6th Corps that I'm delaying here. The other one's Huey. Yeah. So neither one of those is particularly important. I don't know what my chances of the attack with Schertz is. Like, how big a bonus is that to hit him? It might be better if he hits Beaufort first. I don't know what he's doing. So I'm just trying to get enough force in there to make that division's life hell. So I'm going to pull from the chip because there's a bonus for pulling from the cup. Because there's a bonus if you pull from the cup, which is you get something kind of like a directed command when you do so. You don't get the die roll bonus, but you get the opportunity to enter an enemy zone. And unfortunately, I get airs, which is not going to particularly help me. That's 2-5. I don't know where he is. Is he the front one? That is actually very helpful. I can protect 3rd Corps. Before I forget, let's see what I did. I moved airs up, got an attack in. It was successful. Really good odds. Great. Then I got another Union initiative and moved Schertz. And he slammed in with what was a pretty good attack, grabbed Heath's supply wagon, so now that's out. It's over there. I don't think they actually come back, but I'll have to figure that out. Nighttime. But destroyed the unit that was defending this hex here and advanced in up against this one. Hey, all kinds of problems, right? Now I'm thinking that there's something about collateral effects when a hex is lost. I'll have to look that up. maybe I've been playing wrong for a while, which would have caused more massive retreats if what I think is, but I may be blurring with something else. Basically, the question is, does this guy have to make a morale check? Because he's not in good shape. But I ended up destroying the unit that was here, but I took more cohesion hits, so I officially lost the battle. Now, I'm not sure I could advance the way I did. Fuck. This tape is just not working. Fuck, fuck, fuck. God damn it. Advance after combat. If you eliminated your opponent or forced it to retreat, yeah. So we did that. Now it says of either advancing the winning unit or stack into the vacated hex. That was the losing unit, but again, this is one of those weird situations where there was basically nothing left of that unit. It's now the second one of Heath's units over in there along with his wagon. So I did advance because I wanted to put pressure on here, but I had ended up taking 2 cohesion hits to 1. So I had to make morale checks for that, as far as I can tell. And as the loser of the battle, even though there's basically nothing that says you win the battle if you destroy the enemy. Okay. So, you know, there's a bit of ambiguity here. Maybe I shouldn't have had to take morale checks and could advance. Maybe I should have done what I did. Maybe I should have taken morale checks and not been able to advance. I chose one way because I think it's kind of interesting to have a unit pushing forward yet collapsing upon taking the location. CWB allows for that, and it's explicit in that. Schurz ended up getting his horse shot out from him, but the result was one where he was okay, so he didn't affect the morale checks, which is good. But now I have to check to see if there's a collateral effect from retreats. I don't know if, like, I don't think there's anywhere in the rules where there's just a list of everything that causes morale checks. Wrong I was. And I don't see anything here. I did find one thing while I was looking for it, though, which was that artillery units eliminated in combat, not through supply checks, are permanently eliminated. So I pulled them off that. I still don't know with wagons. It may say some in the wagon section. Again, I don't really know. I don't think they can rearg. That's all. But that let me get some of the artillery pieces off the Union side. Let me fix my map and try to figure out where to go from here. So far the battles have been small, 1 hex each. I can live with that. For a chip, because I think the most important thing is to get away from Buford in case he's under defend orders, which he is. But I see that I'm in a lot of trouble now with Heath, because my command is divided. These guys, kind of like Robinson was, these guys can't just rejoin. These guys are going to fall back, but I don't know where the hell they're going to go. They got cut off. This is not going to go well for his division as the Union begins to resurge, at least in part. Discovered I did not, while I did the shaken rolls and whatnot, pawing through everything, I didn't do the necessary task of unflipping all the fired artillery. So, this is going to take a bit longer as I have to basically do the paw through everything once more. Fuck. It wasn't too bad, except I think I found a shaken unit that would have had to make a morale check in a stack that looked like I probably forgot about it. I'm just going to let that kind of error lie. Chances are he would have taken a hit from it and had to retreat or whatever, but we'll just live. All right, on to the next initiative. I mean, that's the kind of, you give me a system that's this painful and this cumbersome, and just that very nature of it is going to introduce more errors. However, in general with a system this random as well, those errors can just be chalked up to, yeah, so what? You know? Whereas when you're looking at some of the more elegant systems, and I'm not talking about CWB or GSS here, but you know, some of the more abstracted, designed for effect type things and everything, you might end up really screwing the game up by missing a little piece like that. Let's see who gets the next one. That will be Union again. I got a Caldwell, took up a position up here. The supply wagon went around the back way, which actually, like, the terrain's so bad here, but I wanted to keep it, you know, I didn't want to leave it hanging out or off-road or whatever, but coming back here feels okay. Stuart could still fuck with it. It's really hard to figure out what you want to do with the wagons. It's like, I really don't want them up on the defensive line. That feels wrong, although they do provide a defensive advantage, so maybe they're good there. It may be that they're optional because they kind of don't work right. I don't know. Anyhow, I'm fatigued at this point. I'm so worried I'm going to draw something big, and I don't know what big would be. Like maybe where the Confederates want to make an attack or something along those lines. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not prepared. I will fatigue out on that. But at least I got a little bit done. Sometime today I got to do laundry, damn it. And probably I'll put it off. But that means that I'm out of shorts that kind of fit me to go dancing in. And you say, ooh, shorts, that's real club attire. Yeah, I know, but it's fucking hot and I have to walk for like an hour and 15 minutes to get there. It's not real hot right now. Like, I could get away with big boy pants. When false dawn is it's like, is it this before the sun's visible? I think when I came up it was. I think we're actually in dawn now. Anyway, I did an action. It's beginning to get kind of chilly, actually. I may wear pants anyway tomorrow. I have to check the temperature before, or Friday. Well, tomorrow. This Thursday. I activated Hood, who attacked and hit a couple of double days units. I'm not getting, you know, the massive attacks. And this is kind of one of the things, is that taking an attack order when you're not doing a whole hell of a lot of attacks may not be that great an idea. But I got really good odds on it at the cost of fatigue markers over here. But I killed a couple of double days units, pushed another one back. You know, First Corps is basically being eliminated here. I just don't think there's much left of it. You know, Robinson's gone, Doubleday's getting whacked, and then over here, I can't remember. That's not Robinson. Oh, Rowley. Wait, Rowley is actually Doubleday. Were those Doubleday units I hit? No, those were Wadsworth units. I gotta change the sheet. I put 4 hits on Doubleday when they should be Wadsworth. And next is McLaws, and they swung up here, attacked the hex with Reynolds and Doubleday in it, which is risky as hell for them. Yeah, Reynolds helps the combat. Reynolds missed getting wounded by 1 point due to the, you know, huge modifiers and everything, big bloody battle. You don't want to have like a decent, you don't want to have your corps commander, or worse, your army commander sitting in a position where he's going to conceivably get lost, because that can add up pretty quickly. There were a couple of attacks. One was here. That actually ended up capturing the wagon over here and getting behind whatever's... That's got to be Doubleday stuff there. It's very hard for me to see. Just mechanically, like the physical components, dealing with them is really painful. First of all, my poor fucking eyes. I remember TSS being acceptable and accessible. It may not be anymore, right? And yeah, he got behind him and he took Doubleday's wagon out, I think. All we have left is Wadsworth's wagon back here. You don't remember if I think they're allowed to like operate off of other people's wagons, but I'm not positive. They better, because it's going to be impossible to recover these units if they can't. The wagons are very easy to capture in this game. And some of that is I'm not putting them stacked with units, but that's because if they're stacked with units and the units get flung back anyway, you're still going to be able to capture the wagons. The only thing is it does give the defend order to the units, but they are under defend orders already. And there was another attack here. That didn't go anywhere near as well, even though these units were surrounded. Maybe Pender will be able to finish them off. But yeah, the Union is in trouble. Real trouble up there. But on the other hand, we got the bright spot. We got shirts. And then after the attacks here on First Corps, into the Third Corps, got Bernie's command, although he's now the Corps commander. And I pulled them back too far. I'm just going to let it lie. But they were able to fall back half, not full. And I moved them full. And I'm just like, I can't undo what I've just done. It's not like other games. So the kind of games that I'm used to, you're not counting up different movement points for all the different units all over the place. And there's not cluttered terrain that's a pain in the ass to cope with. And it's easy to fix these kind of mistakes. But here, it's just too much. Part of it, it's not just the terrain. Part of it is the zones of influence and everything. So you've got to like count which unit went which hex and everything. And it's just, this isn't that much better a position for them than where they would be kind of up here. They're still attackable. They just managed to give more ground than they would have. They chose not to force the attack. Like they could have tried to hold position and forced Confederates to make some low odds attacks. But I'm just like, I want to get out. I want to get out. let me escape. The fact that I made that error and I've done like 3 attacks or three real movements of a division is enough for now. I'm also kind of hungry. In the morning, Johnson continues with his attack. Now he made 2 attacks, neither of which was all that great. He had artillery in place here, which helped, but it still wasn't great odds. But the attack bonus is such a big deal. +3. Right? That's the difference between a 1-to-1 and a 3-to-1 odds, right? 3-to-1's +3. Yeah. And he punched back heirs here, and Johnson moved here. I didn't make attacks all across the line. I maybe should have. It's more costly to the unit, but it gets things going quicker, and it takes more advantages of that +3 roll. The problem is, in these cases, I was attacking in both cases where I could pick off a single unit. Now, I could have pushed here and picked at another unit, but everything's getting kind of shaky over there. Johnson's a little beat up. He's not in bad shape, but he's a little beat up. I think there's just one more attack left, which is Pender. And then the game should get a little easier. Of course, defensive orders could come into play. Obviously this is going to potentially trigger something if they can't get away. Pender's attack, again, you pay for making attacks, man, in the fatigue, but also units are getting pretty worn down here. I don't know how much more I have in me, but it feels like I have to destroy First Corps. But am I going to destroy Pender's division to do it? Yeah. and they're getting close. Unfortunately, there was a hair. There still is somewhere over here, which is causing issues. It ended up pulling a lot of units out of place. I can't quite find it now, but I was unable to extract it safely. But anyway, I managed to take the hill. Fuck. And I don't know if I'm just fucking clumsy nowadays or what, but I have a hellish time with the tweezers, and with the fingers everything squirts all over, so yeah, that's no good either. He managed to take this hex and to push up here with some artillery support and take the ridge line, and we had like multiple retreats and whatnot. There are problems, like this guy can't retreat because he has like 1 hit point left. If he retreated through any means, it would be through an artillery unit, which is not of his same brigade, which as far as I can tell causes him to take a hit. Let me make sure of that, because that just doesn't fucking make sense. I understand that you don't want to mix brigades. For example, a friendly hex not an enemy zone of control. The retreating unit must continue to retreat until it reaches an unoccupied hex. Units retreated through suffer 1 C per hit unless of the same brigade. And take a morale check. Friendly unit in an enemy zone of control. The retreating unit takes a cohesion hit and must continue the retreat until it reaches an unoccupied. That is not what we're facing. We're facing the with no zone. But also, I would have to keep retreating, which becomes more problematic because then I'd have to go through zones. Even though I'm allowed to stack with that artillery normally, if I'm retreating, I'm not. Because there doesn't seem to be any exclusion for retreating through artillery, or wagons for that matter, which I've allowed. Hey. Honestly, I feel like that's enough. I did 2 more divisions. Is there much more to go? Yeah, there is. In terms of real stuff that could happen, I still have units of I have a unit of 3rd Corps in defensive formation. I have all of 1st Corps in the cup. Of course, 2nd Division doesn't exist anymore, I think. I've got the leader over here because I got nowhere to put him anymore. But the rest of 1st Corps does exist and can trigger defensive fire. Yes, I want to try to extract, but there's kind of no way out. Like this guy's artillery, he's stuck there. This guy can't move through a zone. It's just ugly. And if I'm adjacent to the enemy, I force him to attack me, which probably finishes my unit off. So there's not going to be a lot of Doubleday's division left. Who's back here? Wadsworth? He's the only one who's gotten out. He was the first one hit. And he's up here. He might be able to make it out. And Beaufort might be able to make it out, especially with the support from Shirts. But yeah, I've got more battles that could be triggered, and I don't really want to face them. I'm tired, you know. I'm not that tired because I had a bit of a nap, but I got to get in the habit of like not sleeping until, you know, I don't know. It's so fucked up because like there's 1 day a week that I have to be awake between like, call it 4 p.m., 5 p.m. at the outset, at the outer limits, until about the same time in the morning, 5 a.m. or whatever, when I get home, if I walk. And it's got to be longer than that because I've got to play raid afterwards, right? So it takes me, I don't know, sometimes I just pass out. Like I get some raid in, but then can't cope with it. But Then my normal schedule is like, well, I can fudge around on every day except Friday to the extent that, like, I can be awake, you know, I can take a nap over that 5 p.m. barrier. That's not that important. But what is important is that I be awake around 3 a.m. It's just, you know, I'm ruled by this game, but it's like, and yes, I could rearrange when I do the game, but I tend to be awake at night anyway. So like 3 a.m. seems plausible. If I'm not awake at 3 a.m., it means, like, because that is close to when I would be going to sleep. Let's say I went to sleep at a time that's reasonable for me, 1 or 2 a.m., instead of being awake at 3 and having to play a series of stuff through then. Well, if I'm awake at like 2 a.m., then I will, or if I go to sleep at 2 a.m., I'll be waking up at like 10 a.m., and I will have wasted a significant portion of resources. Because, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a way I could balance it out that, like, I could get those resources to work on a different schedule. But the thing is, Friday, Saturday, I shift to a schedule that isn't that, you know, that isn't that different from my normal schedule these days. So it's like, yeah, well, why don't I just do that all the time? Well, because it sucks. Because once every 2-3 weeks I got to go shopping, and maybe I should be doing other things in my life. You know? But nah, that's too difficult. And I mean, a lot of it is the, you know, why fucking bother? I'm in this state of mind for the past couple of years of, I might not be alive in the next couple of weeks. You know, I keep hoping that, right? I'm not doing anything about it. But I've got this vague hope that, you know, whatever the fuck's wrong with me, etc., will just kill me. You know, I don't know. I'll have a heart attack or something. I have no idea, you know. There's something deep inside me that says, I don't think you're going to live very long. And that's, you know, why I neglect my teeth, why I don't bother with doing shit around the house, why every time it comes around to shopping, I'm like, should I really? You know, does it matter? Yeah. And there you have it. The only time I felt like I was alive was when the power was out. And, you know, I was really, really stressed because I couldn't get online and play my game, and other shit too. Like the nights were kind of terrifying. Not, you know, just the terror of like me missing out on raid. On stuff that I needed to do. But not just, you know, just like wondering what the fuck I was going to do about the tree across my driveway, and whether they were ever going to turn the electricity back on, and all kind of shit like that. To play, but I think I'm going to pass on it. I'll be up later, but I can play here when it's nighttime, and it's like 8 p.m. now. I slept until 5:30, right? And it's like, oh, I hope that's not a bird. I don't think it is. I think it's just crap. The thing is that, you know, that I'm awake in the morning, right? But I'm not ready. I'm not willing to go outside and do anything during that period of time. And then I come you know, I wake up and it's not so bad if I wake up at like 3 or 4. Although I do have to play some Raid when I wake up because I've been asleep and there's so much energy that's built up and everything that has to be used. And then I have to play again sometime, you know, after 5. But if I drain everything, you know, at 3, I can be outside and hang out and have a drink or whatever. I'm probably not going to have a cigar, and I doubt I'll even have a drink. I think I'll just sit outside or maybe do a little bit of crap, I don't know, in these last hour or so of decent daylight. But it really sucks, and it wouldn't bother me that much if, you know, I lived a little bit closer to the nightlife type area and would go out for walks every night. But it takes me 45 minutes to get to the downtown area, right? That's, I don't know. And then what do? You know, I walk a little circuit and go home, you know, and that's it. That's how I experience things. The same situation existed for me in Phoenix, to tell you the truth. But I didn't. When I was out walking more, I didn't have the gaming space. That was when I lived in a much tighter situation. And honestly, you know, I feel like the comfort levels that I've achieved in my life have actually made me miserable, or have taken away any chance for like that sort of frantic searching for happipiness or whatever. Which is okay, I guess, because I didn't ever find it, you know, like, or at least very, very seldomly in my life did I find anything that made my life, that improved things. My tendency is always towards this comfort level of, well, I can live with this forever, and as long as nothing ever changes, right? Of course, things change, and then life becomes much more miserable, like, you know, the power goes out or whatever. You know, I mean, my father's getting pretty old. He's going to die. That's going to be an issue. That's going to be a serious issue. I was hoping to make it out the door before him, but I don't think so. And it's just, I don't know. It's just like so crazy to me that my whole life has really been this way. And it's not like I take great joy in playing games. They're just the constant comfort thing that's always been here. And Raid is kind of like a narcotic that prevents me from facing the misery of reality for long periods of time. Gaming kind of does too. Reading does too. The truth of the matter is reality fucking sucks. And, you know, you got to seek your escapes where you can. Alcohol's a damn good one, but limited. And all of them are putting off the things that one should do to prevent great misery in the future, you know. So, like, I don't know. Like, I'm doing this, hey, I'm trying to just fucking live one day at a time with the hopes that they fucking end before I have to goddamn deal with the results of living one day at a time. Right. So, a little mellower now. I went, did some yard work. It's relatively late at night. Not morning yet. Not for a while. It's around 10:30 or so, maybe 11. And, you know, now I can't do anything else, basically. You know, I can't do anything outside except go for a walk, which I no longer seem to do. And there's reasonable reasons for me to hold off playing Raid for a few hours until an event comes up. So this seems like a good time to try to push on. I'm really hoping that I can get this turn under wraps for whatever reason. Maybe I quit, maybe I don't after it, whatever. But the main reason is I want to, you know, once Sunday, Monday, whatever, roll around, I want to play some more 18xx, and then you know, see what comes of that, and whether I'm doing this or not. Anyway, onward and upward. We still have 3 defend options here, which means that there's a fair amount of work to do this turn, and that's it. I've been neglecting putting the little attack banners out. I'm not sure why. You know, like, I think I put one somewhere, and that's going to be problematic. Yeah, I put them over on the first core. I didn't put them on Pender, who really should have one. The problem is, this is something I can actually kind of remember. But once the attack chit is gone, it's not trivial. So Pender had one. Johnson had one. Let's get one near Johnson. My worry is that I'll forget that I have these out there. You know, like, but it's not obvious to me anymore who's attacking, who's not. So I think having these little flags out there is actually a pretty good idea for me at this point, especially if I'm not going to make it through the turn and have to, you know, well, no matter what, because even if I do make it through the turn, I want to know who did the attacks, in terms of who's under attack orders, or well, no, actually that doesn't matter. It only matters if I don't finish the turn, because anybody who wants to do attack orders next turn will pay for them, and they won't have to worry, because it doesn't carry over like that. So that's cool. I know I'm not making a ton of sense. I'm kind of thinking to myself while I'm chattering, I'm so fucking useless, even on videos now. Once upon a time I was okay at them, sort of, almost. But whatever. Anyway, I guess we get started, much as we don't want to. This is a little fucked up. I did not realize some of the implications here, because it doesn't actually feel like you can withdraw from a zone of control. See, here they say you can leave using either voluntary or mandatory withdrawal. You can leave a zone of control in your own movement phase, but up here it says, when a given division is activated, all enemy units exerting a zone into any of its member units must be attacked. With an exception, if the activated division is under defend orders, the non-activated units. I don't think that's what's intended. I think you're allowed to withdraw. Beyond that, I haven't violated anything yet, but I was looking up to see, hey, is it reasonable, because here I've got Anderson, who's not under attack orders, not under directed orders, has a lot of troops, though, sitting next to this artillery piece. Can I throw more forces in, if I so desire? And I believe I am. Because when we go to entering, unless a unit of the currently activated division is already in the ZOC of an enemy unit, the division's units may not enter an enemy ZOC unless, and then it's got either a first action impulse or a direct command attack or reserve order. Which I think actually means Anderson is free to make any attacks he likes. He, you know, can set up and enter additional zones, etc. Now, there isn't anything I want to make except that, but I'm just kind of trying to parse how these rules work, because they are funny, right? Like, CWB allows you almost unlimited tactical operation within your orders, right? Like, but here there's serious, like, oh look, early went, I just did him. He could not enter a zone of control. I chose not to fire my artillery because there would be counter battery fire, which, yep, we have all these fucking artillery. Son of a bitch. You know, one fucking piece, you touch one piece and the whole stack collapses in a way that's not, I don't know. I don't remember being this clumsy. And then the map moves and all kind of shit. But yeah, all this artillery here I've got flipped over. It shouldn't be. It hasn't fired this turn. It hasn't been used. But it's like, it's just so hard to catch like I went through and tried to undo all of these. I didn't see these, I guess. I don't know. I focused on the areas where there was actually combat, but there's some of these may have fired turns ago. You know, it's just such a pain in the ass to work your way through everything. Look, there are other games where you have to flip and unflip your artillery and everything, but the artillery is either pretty obvious in them, and that's one of the problems with this fucking thing, is that the artillery is not really clearly visible as such. I guess it kind of is more so because on this side it's pale, which looks like damaged units, but, you know, like here. But this little cross just doesn't fucking do it for me. And then on the other side, it's got like the black bar, and I can kind of see that. So like, usually I can figure out what artillery is without having to spend too much effort on it. But it's still annoying, and it can be anywhere in the stack, so you got to paw through these big stacks and whatnot. I try to put it on top just for ease, but that means shaken markers get hidden and all kind of shit like that. Like, there's just so much information contained in stacks and hidden within stacks, because there's the combat counters, the individual shaken markers, and all this. It's just so much more like painful to deal with than the other systems that are covering the same kind of material are, in just so many fucking ways. You know, from the way the map looks, the amount of different terrain in it, the slick counters, the representations on them that aren't very clear to me. Again, I don't know how much of this is just like me at this age dealing with an unfamiliar and, you know, new system, and how much of it is presentational problems in it, as well as the overall. There is definitely a lot more clunkiness to this system, just in terms of the representation, the amount of counters that are sitting in a stack, and the amount of information on those counters. You know, compare this to like TSS or CWB. In CWB, it kind of doesn't matter which side the counter's on, right? One side is line, one side is column, or something like that, I think. I don't really recall. But it's like the movement formation, which makes it fairly easy. In TSS, you know, yeah, there's a routed side on it, but that's a pretty big difference. Here, you have to paw through to find, you know, the strength points and everything. And there's a fair amount of, like, stuff that's not clear. Like, so in these other systems, if a unit's shaken or whatever, it's probably fallen back. You know, it's probably not sitting on the line with a lot of information counters. See, CWB is different because the information's on the record sheets mainly. Now, you can say, well, there's more record keeping than in this. Yeah, kinda. I don't know. I'm just finding this incredibly difficult to cope with in so many ways, and really easy to hassle. Okay, I gotta do whatever the fuck. Anderson's. As an example of how variable the combat system is, right? Here I have these guys completely surrounded. Oh no, I have them completely surrounded. That does it. So I had a +10 bonus, I thought, which brings this up to 25. That's going to be 4 cohesion hits. Fine. You know, I was probably going to get 3 or 4. All right. But then I looked at this at 18 with -10. That puts me at 8. I do 1 cohesion hit per unit. So this thing takes like 4, but I take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cohesion hits for that 4. Okay. But instead, I forgot I have them surrounded. That's an extra 2, so that brings it to a -12. That makes the casualty check for Anderson fairly light. You might not want to put him in there, but getting that huge odds shift makes it likely you're not going to take damage. And it's unlikely. I'd need a 3 or a 4, or I'd need a 4 or less to be injured. But those happen. That's how like some of the inactivity rolls happen and whatnot, right? You know, I've got ones where they need a 2 or 3 to go inactive, but they do, you know. Anyway, that's going to blast the shit out of that thing, and so mission successful, I guess. So Greg swings his forces over here. I think that's the end of Greg. Now we're at Kilpatrick. And does a big artillery bombardment on Hayes, causing a couple of casualties, a couple of cohesion hits. You see doubles here. That reminds me that I forgot to check for doubles. That was for a morale check. No big deal there. But, or actually, I don't think it was. I think I just bumped them. But seeing them reminds me, hey, I'm forgetting to check for doubles when I fire artillery. I don't think I want to do counter battery fire. I'm not sure I can even. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I got the hazy weather, which reduces the range for zone of influence. But it's just kind of I didn't choose to fire when I moved into position. I'm not sure it makes sense for me to fire now. That's another thing. The system has so many unfamiliar concepts that are kind of obscured behind, you know, this modifier system and whatnot. I can't just look at a simple CRT or fire chart and say, that's a pretty good shot, I'll take it. And some of the unfamiliar concepts are like, you know, hey, if I fire, I might lose some morale off my army, and I'll lose cohesion hits off my artillery, which feels really fucking weird, but kind of works. So it's just like, I'm just not sure it's worth firing, you know? If I know the chances of an ammo depletion, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that because I can reload the ammo, but if I'm taking cohesion hits, which means the unit is, you know, closer to becoming destroyed, it's just weird, and it's like, I don't know if it's worth firing anymore. And those kind of concepts, it's going to take a long time of play of this for those to kind of start gelling and become intrinsic to your play. And the pain levels overall, how many of them are things that might eventually mellow out and be reduced? I don't know. I don't think many. I think like 90%, 80% maybe of the pain factor is going to be there all the time. But even if I'm wrong, it creates this massive barrier to entry to the system. It's like, as I fumble around trying to get this counter there and the counter on top behind it. Also, that whole concept of depth of unit. Again, a reasonable thing, that there's an advantage to creating a reserve line, even if it's not using the reserve rolls. It's just this, you know, supporting fire and whatnot, or supporting unit, not supporting fire. Supporting fire is artillery. Let's get the terms absolutely correct, because otherwise we'll get confused when we look at the charts. But, you know, I'm knocking counters back and forth and just really having a trouble. Again, there's a heavy counter density and a thickness to the lines and everything that's not present in the other games. And again, provides a, what I'd call sort of a mechanical barrier of some sort. I mean, barrier isn't really the word. It's an impediment to playing, right? And the slick counters, of course, help. At least it's not a slick map. It's a wonderful Clash of Arms map. I wish they had matte counters, that's all. Which could cling to each other. The paper clings a little better than the slickeriness. But it's just, wow. I mean, just so much of this game just gets in your way. Anyway, I got roads moving. I can't really do anything with them, but I want to form up a line. Maybe fire some artillery into there to help Johnson, to help Early if he's coming around that way. Who knows? That's the kind of shit I'm regularly facing when I try to paw in with those counters. And that's using tweezers. Now, look, maybe there's better tweezers out there. These tend to be pretty good with most games, but whatever. And this is because the artillery fire killed the leader. And that's going to cause a -1 morale check against everything adjacent to him. That means is I have to withdraw every stack. I already did this one. I got 2 more to do. This one I'm in the process of doing. And roll morale for each unit. You know, most games, it's like, top unit takes morale checks. The rest just live with it. Again, the focus of the detail feels like it's being put in the wrong places to me, you know, and done in ways that are just mechanically painful. Instead of making 1 morale check for the entire stack, I'm having to make 3 morale checks for each stack or whatever. Each unit gets individual shaken or broken markers, may individually rout and cause other consequences, etc. It's just... Just had an artillery unit take its final cohesion hit due to the leader being killed. Other games that try to represent a fair amount of information, I'm thinking here the later GBACW games, have things like the gun crew runs away. That's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with, but hey, you know, you have a marker on top of the gun says no crew, or with the letter of the crew that's missing, you have the crew flying off behind it. They can come back and take the gun. As far as I can tell in this counts as a friendly artillery unit eliminated by bombardment, not ammo depletion. And I think the only thing, see, it says artillery units are permanently eliminated by ground combat, but if eliminated by bombardment or ammo depletion, they're capable of being reorganized. Okay. But I still cause the 3-point hit. So yeah, it does represent the gun crew running off. I was worried that this had a hole, you know, but honestly, I think the system actually works pretty well. You know, at least once I start playing it correctly at all and taking into account what it's trying to represent, it's just an absolute fucking nightmare to play. And after conducting that artillery fire and all the requisite morale checks, destruction, whatever, I'm done for a while. You know, I mean, I can do like 3 divisions. And we're not talking about heavy fighting going on here, right? We attacked 1 hex here. We bombarded a hex here. We bombarded a hex here. A 4th thing early moved and didn't do anything. But yeah, I mean, 3 relatively minor occurrences. And each division is taking like 10-15 minutes to move. You know, not this one, but each of the others, just because of all the mechanical stuff. When you do any goddamn thing in this game, it triggers so many die rolls, so many chart lookups, so much fucking shit. I came up here thinking a reasonable person would just quit, and then I said, yeah, but I'm not a reasonable person. Next activation was Stuart's, and I'm still not sure. I mean, I might still. I had a hellish time because, again, the movement in this game is complex and painful. Again, same way I remember things like BAR, Battles of the Age of Reason, and Labatt series, where it's just getting in the way. There's too many different terrain types, too many different things that affect your movement. It's just a cumbersome process. One which, look, it's more realistic, but I can't bear the realism. Where what I want to do is just be able to take my line along the road and move it, all together, which I can do if they're in road column. But when they're not, there's costs for moving that are different depending on whether the road is full and whatnot. Look, that kind of thing works in some games. I didn't mind it too much in Central Front series. Here, though, I've got so many fucking units trying to do so much in each. I don't know. Anyway, I was trying to get around behind to threaten this supply wagon, but I didn't have enough movement to do so. So I've put myself into a position where Stuart probably doesn't want to be here, but as long as he's creating these threats, the Union has to do something about them. And something like, 6th Corps, which is planning on taking up its position on Cemetery Hill, etc., well, maybe half or a third of it is going to have to go and defend a line behind and just try to press. I'm not finding it easy to utilize infantry to cover. But on the other hand, my cav is not really able to get in the way. The roads don't work that way. They don't cut down here very nicely. I can try to bring Kilpatrick in and see if he does it. But he's under defend orders right now, so probably won't be able to. And I think Greg has already gone. Look over here. Again, this is part of the problem is the pulsing. Like, I don't like pulse activations too much in my tactical stuff. And the reason for that is there tends to be a whole shitload of stuff all over the board. Again, pulsing works well when you have very few units to deal with. Very few things that are going to be pulsed. And honestly, that may be the problem with Vietnam as well. Playing the whole campaign, you're using a pulsed system with a shit ton of stuff and lots of little activated used markers all over the place and everything. And it just, the turns just take too long and you can't kind of express what you want to do as easily. Now, pulsing in something like Civil War or even in Banish All Their Fears didn't bother me so much. In Korean War, but in these games with a ton of units, it's a cumbersome system to use with it. And I would say the same with Chitpul, which is a reason to stay away from like Three Dog. That, is Gettysburg done with a Chitpul variation of the GB, well, the Chitpul incarnation of the GBACW. I liked the old versions, the I Go You Go. But yeah, when you start getting, and look, I understand that these things, any kind of pulsing system, any kind of Chitpul, whatever, which essentially is a form of that, yeah, they add a certain level of realism and believability to the whole story, but it's hard to cope with, Is that a huge deal? I don't know. I don't really know. It's just, everything feels so painful. And I mean, when I was in the midst of moving Stuart, I was like about ready to quit. When I was coming up here, I was about ready, I wanted to play a couple more divisions before I make that decision. I don't know why. I know I've seen enough. And what's more is this game is a fucking blowout right now with the Union taking all these points of hits. I don't know how quickly that can recover, but part of me says, damn it, I should be able to get through the first day so that I can at least see what the recovery, what the cycle of the game is. Because there is no way that the Confederates can keep up their attacks with the hits that they're taking, right, to morale and fatigue and whatever, into the units themselves. They're getting worn out, as it should be, right? Like, you look at units getting worn out in TSS or CWB, doesn't really stop them. But here, there's a fundamental capability to regroup your units if you stop the attack, if you stop hitting the enemy. And of course, if it's a good thing for you to be recouping or regrouping and forming, trying to rally your forces, it might be the time for the enemy to make a counterattack. All kinds of interesting stuff there. Stuff that doesn't really apply in the other systems. There's a lot here that is appealing. It's just the damn cost is so high. And I'm not sure if there would be an easy way to express some of these things, right? There's something really cool about the fact that these losses are almost all recoverable. Everything except the first point, right? So long as, per unit, so long as you take the time to do so, which puts this kind of rhythm to the battlefield, where they fight significantly hard for a while, but then it's in the attacker's best interests to call off the attack and try to recover some of their losses so that they can keep going. Now, if you look at the other systems that I've dealt with playing this, they don't really have that, right? Sure, you can recover stragglers in CWB, and there's something similar to that. I think it's an overnight recovery in TSS as an optional rule. But in general, it's like either you have the advantage and want to press the attack, or you don't, and you're done. You're no longer going to be the attacker until something happens that opens up an opportunity, and generally the units just wear down to the bone, and that's it. They're done. Pull them off the line. But here there's a recovery opportunity, and that is very, very much, you don't see as concentrated a series of attacks, right? And if you look at like how the battles actually went, well, these units may be a little too fragile, to tell you the truth. They seem to be taking losses a little too quickly. Given that we've been fighting sharply for a few hours, right? 3-4 hours, somewhere in there. We've been fighting pretty heavily. There were units that held the line and kept fighting, especially on the Confederate side, for quite a long time. And I don't feel like that is viable. Honestly, Heath is in real trouble. Pender is worn out. McLaws probably could use a rest. Second Corps, I think Rhodes pretty much needs a rest. That doesn't mean I can't throw the other units in their place, but it's just a fundamental way of playing that's different, and I think more accurate than what you see in the other designs. The problem is, could we express what this game is doing with a system that's not as cumbersome? And look, there's lots of stuff that could go away. So for example, all this fucking picayune terrain shit and painful movement aspects that just pushes it beyond my limit for what I can cope with under that, that could easily go away, right? What about the combat system? Well, the cohesion hits is a nice way to represent things. I don't know. I mean, it's like I can see the argument for almost every piece of this game. It's just when it all comes together, it's too damn much. All right, let me do another division. My next chip pull got Howe here, and he went and took Culp's Hill. He's moving up into. I don't want to take cemetery yet. 5th Corps could actually cover that if need be. But Culps looks like it's in some possible danger, either coming around this way when Greg pulls back and whatever. Like, I'm not going to really be able to defend Benners, I think. So I'm kind of looking at some kind of defense running up this way, maybe, or across here. Eventually I need to defend cemetery, but the units that I throw that way may be the ones that have to do that. Right now I'm in an emergency situation where I have to cover. And likewise, I then used my direct action for Newton, pushing him up here, blocking Stuart's way. I could have closed with Stuart, but that would have forced me to fight, and I wasn't in a good position to do so. I kind of would like to take the hill here, but again, I didn't want to be right adjacent to him and have to hit what is not artillery, it's cavalry. It's hard to tell the difference. I don't know if it's even showing up on the video, but the cav have crossed swords, the artillery have crossed cannons over there. And it's really not that obvious to me, the difference, when, you know, but I kind of know the horse artillery is a little behind. But it's not guaranteed, because this kind of like went in 2 different directions to get to where it is, so I don't know. Anyway, that's a blocking move that'll probably force Stuart to come back around. He can't do anything about that. He might go back up and try up this way again. It's just like probing all over, looking for some kind of place where he can have some effect. I don't want to just throw him into combat. I don't think that's what cav is useful for. They're too penalized when they're on the attack. I got the ugly situation of first of all, the Confederates are out of commands, which means they won an initiative and got to burn a Union command. I burned a direct command for Huey. That's the last of the Union kind of non-cup commands. Anything that's drawn from the cup is going to be a 2-hex movement if the Confederates force it out on a burn. So that's not very good. Of course, no chance of inactivity, but, you know, whatever. It wasn't that big a deal when I was playing on the operational, even though I cut it to a 1-hex movement, because 2 hexes on there is not far from full movement. And especially on the outer areas of the operational map. When you get to the inner, yeah, I don't know how many hexes they can move, but whatever. But when I get, what I ended up drawing was Humphreys. Now Humphreys is under defend orders over here. And what I have to do that's painful is I have to disambiguate what's Humphreys, what's not. I know this stuff isn't, but I don't know about this stack. I think that may be Confederate. Maybe not, no. I'm suspecting this is Humphreys. I don't know about either of these 2 stacks. They all have green pieces in them. I'm going to have to paw through them and see what I've got, right? Yeah. And I mean, chances are I'll squirt counters at least once. The problem is I try to disambiguate this. The reason this is difficult is these guys have a little red diamond on them. These guys have a little white, but it's in the middle of the counter, so I really have to paw through the entire stack. And of course things get shuffled, maybe flipped, maybe cohesion hits change. All kind of random shit happens when, you know, you have a difficulty coping with the counters. There's a shaken marker on top of this. I had to pull it over here. That's all I could get out with my tweezers successfully. I was just trying to look under the counters, and yeah. The other thing is, you got this army artillery, which can be assigned to anything, right? Well, because I put my artillery on top so I can see where the artillery is, because I want to be able to use it for that. And why the fuck didn't these fire back? I don't know. God. All the effort that I put in on the initial fire, I forgot to do counter battery fire. Because that first hex broke and caused so many morale checks and everything, that I just completely forgot to fucking do it. I should have been doing it. Anyway. Not a big deal. I can fire now, but I'll be firing after I withdraw, which is not what I wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, all the cumbersome mechanisms in this game bring you to this place where, like, you fucking forget to do things, you end up missing modifiers, you end up missing all kind of shit. Very, very small, simple games. And here I'm thinking about stuff like the No Retreat game. And I only played the first one. I don't know if it got uglier as you go. Stuff like that, you can deal with all this kind of complexity being baked into it because there aren't a lot of counters, there isn't a lot going on. It's okay to go with these really kind of, I don't know how to put it, more cumbersome, computationally complex, whatever, system designs. Now, I mean, I'm thinking about games like La Grande Guerre there, which I love and has an incredibly complicated combat system. You know what? There's a whole lot less pieces. Even though it's got a lot of pieces on the board and everything, they're all kind of working, like, usually it's a single hex is working together. And yes, the combat for a single hex is relatively complex, but you also don't have these muddled situations where you have units interpenetrating one another and everything. It just doesn't happen, right? So that complex, heavy-duty combat system works for that game, but it doesn't work for something like this. And this doesn't feel like the same kind of complexity. It's not giving me the same kind of narrative of round after round of combat that LGG or Empires in Arms or whatever gives. But it is giving me the same kind of headache in terms of total amount of effort for each combat round or each combat situation. It's just on a different level. I'm rolling a lot more dice and fiddling with counters a lot more. Turns out it's Bernie under there, not Humphreys. I know there's a couple of Humphreys back here. I don't know if there's much left of him. I got to do the same for this one now. You know, try to figure out what can I move, what can I not. Now remember, Bernie has already moved, so I may not want to pull Humphreys back, but if I don't, I force Johnson to hit me, which may be what I have to do. What I'd like to do is move this into place as a supporting unit, but I don't know if I can do that either. I have to check the brigade to see if it's the same brigade. And I can't just say, oh, it's same division. No, now I have to check the brigade names. Sometimes my eyes can't read them either. I'm just about at my breaking point here. What I did was I reorganized a couple of units down here from Carr's brigade. I don't know, you know, there may be more of him stuck under one of these Shakens. I don't fucking know. You know, I mean, there's some limit to how many counter stacks I can check at any given time. What the fuck? There may be units back here that are part of his division that, you know, got left through, and I thought they were Confederates from now on. That's the kind of mistake. A mistake that is of such profound importance in terms of the effect in the local area that it outweighs all the advantages that the system might provide. When you're looking and saying, I'm not sure. Wow. Okay, here's some of him that I didn't even bother to move. So there's some that's lost. I'll have to try to move them forward. But I did the attack here before I do that, which I shouldn't have, but I didn't see these guys. Yeah, so there are some lost units, right? Like back intermingled with 5th Corps here. They've got to get the fuck out of there. And it was kind of a tied fight. Both sides took 2 cohesion hits. The Union got a pretty good die roll. These aren't the die rolls. These are the leader loss checks, but whatever. Because you never have the die rolls remaining after you've conducted a combat because you've done so many other things. Enough again to fatigue me. I don't know. We did what, one combat, one battle roll, or one battle situation, which didn't involve a whole lot of rolls. It involved rolling the dice a couple of times, but pawing through all the counters, trying to figure out what's going on. Again, too taxing. At some point or another, I just decide I'm done. I know I'm not going to make it to the night. I know I'm not going to make it to the night. I know that I'm almost certain that this situation is devastating for the Union, that they've just taken way too many hits. Not so much on the units. Those, again, they can be recovered. But on the Army morale, can that be recovered? Yes, it can. If I start throwing units into reserve, it can. And I actually have extra. So this is the other thing. I have extra units on the board compared to the Confederates. And when you take the Army Reserve, you're going to be looking at the Army morale factor here for the reserve situation, right? Well, the Army morales for these are 5s and 6s. They're a little higher than most of the Union ones, but something like Bernie has a 5. His division is as big, and there's a whole lot more Union divisions than there are Confederate divisions. So the Union has a resiliency to its Army morale. So I actually think that I might be able to recover that, right? I've taken, what is it, right about 100 hits on my Army morale. No, we're well over 100. 100's back here. No, that's 110. 100's here. So I'm getting close to 150 hits, right? But if I can rest, if I could have 2 good-sized divisions in reserve, whether or not they're actually reserves or not, right? Rather, like, I'm not counting reserves that I actually want to use as reserves. If I could have a couple of units in reserve orders, I can recover that over the rest of the day. Like, the Union Army can recover, and that's what I don't quite get, is how much capability will I have to do that? How much do I need to throw my forces into the line? You know, I could throw some of this shit into reserve, right? Instead of trying to get it on the field. I don't necessarily want to throw units that are beaten up into reserve because they can't recover from under that. The only way that, like, their recovery process is the opposite of, or it's not the same thing as what recovers the Army morale. So recovering divisional forces, and this is where the problem kind of comes down, is you really want a lot of forces to be doing a lot of good things. Now, that kind of decision making makes sense. The problem that I have with it is I just don't believe that having forces in an unused reserve, the way it works in this game, would be as beneficial to the Army morale as, like, I just don't know. It's like, I can make an argument for it, but it's not one that I really believe in. It's just very, very difficult. And I'm just waiting for that, like, tipping point to come where I say, fuck it, I'm done. And I know it's going to happen. And I'm not going to learn anymore. And that should be enough to convince me to give up now. Stop expending all this effort on this fucking thing. It's not worth it. There's a lot that I think is good about the game, but the problem is it's just not playable. And, you know, I walked away from something else, but it was much worse, right? Like, in terms of proportionality. I don't know. I can't see it beyond, because I got that table there. But it was a CSWE door prize. The one year that I showed up, that I actually pre-registered in time to be able to get a door prize. Normally I would just like be like, I don't know if I want to go or not. And then it'd be like, well, I have a few days off, or I'll just go for the weekend or whatever. And I would, you know, just pay at the door when I came in. I think there were a couple of years where I just came for a couple of days, and I wasn't really involved in the expo particularly. And I think I just played, like, you know, pickup games and stuff. But I did want to support them, so anyway, the one door prize I got was the game Chosen, which was a Decision Games game trying to do like a hell of a lot in terms of close tactical stuff having to do with the encirclement at Chosen. And it just had huge stacks of units and just so much pain in it. Now, it had a lot less stuff going on as a whole, but also it was like a very uninteresting situation to me compared to like gunpowder era stuff. And, you know, I'm just not that interested in modern tactical stuff. Anyway, it was just a nightmare, and I walked away from that pretty quickly. It's fucking Gettysburg, man. I want to do Gettysburg all the time, but not this one. Not this one. But the problem is, there's neat stuff going on, and it's exposing stuff. As I learn the system more and more, it's exposing things that I like that I don't feel other games capture very well. It's also, you know, devoted to some other principles that I'm just like, yeah, I don't really give a shit about this. Like, you know, sure, it might be more accurate, but I don't really care. It's Sunday morning, and after a long night of raid, after having recovered from dancing, by the way, I lost my decent lighter. I'm hoping I got a ride home. I'm hoping it got dropped there. I'm using this one that doesn't have a working hinge anymore. Just coated over. But this is really going to be a problem. As usual. And every little loss, you know, every little problem. Like, I hurt my back. I noticed that it was pretty bad when I was doing yard work Thursday. And then dancing, which often helps it, really fucked it up worse. But anyway, I did one activation here. Not yet ready to quit. The main reason being, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I'm up at this stupid hour and can't get to sleep. But anyway, Buford got his defensive activation. I pushed forward on the hill, forced Heath to counterattack, and drove him back, hurting him a little bit more. Again, we're just trying to do a lot of damage to Heath's units to make it so that it's not a workable division. And the fact that it's divided up is going to be in a lot of trouble. All right, we'll go to another chit pull, I guess. We made quite a bit of progress because there wasn't anything much in the cup. Buford was the only combat activation. Had an inactivity here, which is not too cool. We have Geary heading off up this way. We have, let's see, Huey and Kilpatrick both shifted their force over to defend against a possible move by Stewart. And again, like, the Union Cav is getting kind of split up now because Greg is up there. Huey's part of Greg, for what that's worth. And some other little movements. Howard running over to fix the inactivity. Who's this? Barlow. Moving up, put some more pressure on Heath on his, like, little lost lambs back there. I think that's about it. And that means we go to the operational or the movement order units, which is a fairly simple process. But like everything in the game, I do a little bit and I'm like, I think I'd rather eat. The operational movement segment's done. Get a little bit of a traffic jam showing up here. And it's time for me to put units on the map, do cleanup and whatnot. One of my issues is it's a movement order, or march mode order, right? But it's the operational movement segment. And it has nothing to do with the operational maps. It's just, you know, it's why I kind of stumble over what to call anything. But there's sort of an inconsistency to it all that leads itself to that. Yeah, all right. We got a couple guys to go on the map, here and here. Oh, what the fuck? Yeah, Sedgwick's where he belongs. Okay. And we'll get those down and show you what's kind of working out. I had to jump Meade up on Cemetery Hill because he was kind of exposed up here, and it's possible First Corps might be coming through there. So, yeah, we got 12th building up its line here. So. And this is the situation as we roll into the 9 a.m. turn. What do we got going on? Heath has been divided up, and that's giving Beaufort probably a rest. Meanwhile, he's trying to pull back and try to recover at least half his division. The other half has to try to find its way through. Now, Pender here can probably put enough pressure on things. The mechanisms for, like, I'm getting more used to coping with the system and the recovery elements and whatnot, but it is still far more taxing than almost anything else almost anything I find playable. Probably the closest comparison I can think of is the Central Front series, which overall the recovery of units happened all over the board, and it was tons and tons of units you have to flip, and it took a lot of time. It was a heavier overall ask than this, but it wasn't as painful on sort of a per little cluster type element. You just sort of go through and see, does this unit recover, does this unit not? And you can put, you know, a marker. I would use my tweezers or whatever to record what's going on. We got some units that are still shaken, and they're rightfully so. One was a broken unit that recovered. One was, you know, a couple of them are ones that had to make die rolls and didn't make them, taking extra hits for that and falling back further and whatnot. But yeah, we've got the gathering of the Union forces starting to come into play here. I think we're going to see a line very similar to the historical. It's just happening way early because the Union forces were able to get on the operational map. The restrictions against them are almost entirely ineffectual. Had I not wanted to cut off the Stuart entry, which didn't do me any good, he came in back there. Had I not wanted to cut off the opportunity that Stuart would have to come in this way if he burned his wagons, the Union could have really positioned itself on the Gettysburg, on the tactical map, pretty heavily without causing the trip line to be triggered, which means that the Confederates would have still no idea where the Union was, which, you know, and that would have happened, you know, on the June 30th turn. And certainly by early July 1st, we'd be seeing much of what we're seeing here. All the recovery would have happened, and the Confederates would have had no reason to forego their big victory point gain, whatever that is, and however I'm going to assess that. But instead, by causing that trip line to go over, we really have both armies completely on the board here, and we're moving into what, the 10 a.m. turn? 9 a.m. turn. 9 a.m. turn on July 1st with everybody here. So I think the battle's not going to last as long as it did historically, because part of what made it last so long was that forces just kept coming in, right? You know, I mean, Pickett didn't really show up until the second night, and Union forces were coming in all through that second day. So now we're looking at both armies fully on the field. Now the Union has taken what may be irreversible losses. When we look at this, you know, I don't know how quickly that can be reversed. We'll start seeing at some point, but I've got to get my units on the board before I can start throwing them into reserve orders and recover all my army morale, you know, for free, basically. And likewise, the Confederate attack, in a lot of ways, it's kind of running out of gas, you know. Yeah, Fourth Corps is fine. Yeah, they're not here. They won't be here. Third Corps is pretty beaten up, but you know, First and Second have taken some hits. McLaws is pretty beaten up as well. Anderson's okay. So we're basically one corps worth of Confederate troops probably should be starting to recover at this point, and let the other two corps do what work they can. But I don't really see a terribly... I don't see a lot that... I think a lot's going to kind of calm down to some extent. The Confederates want to try to rush Cemetery if they can do so. I think it's a worthwhile goal. So we may see continued pressure by Second Corps and First and Anderson kind of trying to push in, and just see if we can take it on this first day before these reinforcements come up. Because once they do, life's a lot harder. Life's a lot harder. Anyway, I'm going to load this up because I'm going to play some 18XX instead. And again, I don't know. At any point I may decide, yeah, I just don't have it to keep going with this. This turn was easier, though. Even though there's a fair amount going on, this turn was relatively easy. Although, honestly, the combat's been less intensive than it was before, because First Corps is trying to withdraw, Third Corps is trying to withdraw, and the Confederates don't have, again, some of their units are kind of wearing a little thin, and I would really like to recover those units to launch another attack, but time is so important here, you know. If I can get the Confederates into a good defensible position, then they can start losing army morale. I mean, honestly, yes, the attacker loses some, there's no question. But it's the loss of the defensible terrain that's the real cost that really kind of has racked up against the Union, I think, more than anything else. Although, I mean, we look, and yeah, the Union's gotten its ass handed to it so far. So, I don't know. All right, up it goes.